How much do you know about the Constitution? How much do you not know about the Constitution? It's so easy for us in these days when so many different news stories are debatable, whether or not we believe them or we don't believe them, or whether or not we find them constitutional or not. The news stories within themselves have power within themselves a lot of times, and the subjects that they want to talk about seem just unconstitutional within themselves. So today we're going to contemplate the Constitution, and right now it's time to contemplate.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
So help me God, so help me God, so help me God. I guess my question is, which God would that be? That's kind of a standing joke with my wife and I whenever we hear somebody mention God and we know kind of where they stand on things. It's kind of like, all right, which God would that actually be that you're standing on? And so speaking of standing on things, two of my favorite people are going to join me today. They do not have a problem whatsoever taking a stand in whatever they're adamant about, whatever they're passionate about. And one of those would be the long-reaching Abigail, oh hear ye, oh hear ye, oh hear ye. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Time to say good morning.
Yes. Good to be here with you, Mark. How you doing?
Well, I'm blessed to the Lord. We are still here. I was telling Adina earlier, it's kind of like that was the lamest hurricane I ever went through. I haven't been through that many, but we've been through some tornadoes. So, we kind of can judge a little bit. But, oh my gosh, we just went through a hurricane and it like came on and it was windy and storming. And then Adina says, okay, here comes the eye of the hurricane. And it just like everything stopped and we went out and did some things and it never really started back up. And then all of a sudden this morning, we went all day yesterday with it being, of course, our electricity was out all day yesterday. So it was real calm. It was real nice. And we laid back and relaxed and enjoyed not having electricity and understanding that, hey, we take a lot of things for granted. And then this morning it's starting to rain again. And I'm going, okay, is that still the hurricane? Or were we in the eye of the storm for a whole day? Because it never did start back up. So anyway, it was kind of weird, but you've been through a few. You've endured a few being right on the coast there.
Yeah, we have. I mean, I really was preparing as much as I could because I didn't know what was going to happen. But I kind of sensed that we were just going to have some beautiful wind, lots of wind. And we did have some rain. But James, when he came home finally, I said, James, this is a very strange storm. I mean, I believe that we are definitely being watched over and protected. And so anyhow, when I saw what happened in North Carolina and other parts, especially North Carolina, really seemed to get hit the worst out of. I don't know what happened when we went up the further up the coast. I didn't hear any other reports, but
yeah.
anyhow, my heart went out to you and Adina in that area. So we did experience some wind, and we did experience some rain, but nothing really. I'm very thankful. I am so thankful because
Yeah.
we had some storms here. we had,
Yeah.
I mean, we have the snow, Mark. Anytime you want to embrace some storms, come on up to New England.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. We left Kansas and Oklahoma to get away from those things. We're not interested in going back
I don't
into
blame
it,
you.
but
I
it's fun to step foot on it for a day, but we're done with all that.
I don't know if you remember our story. We went after one big, huge hurricane that happened here in New England. I think it was a couple of years ago. And we went down by the beach and down by Gloucester. And so we were walking along the boardwalk down there, just kind of enjoying it, but seeing how high the water had come up during the storm. And we're just walking along and everything. Next thing we see is this huge wave coming at us. I mean, it must have stood about 12 feet high, no lie. And
Wow.
there we were. And all of a sudden, we got enveloped by this wave. I mean, literally.
Wow.
And everybody on the other side, I was saying, how come there's no one on this side of the boardwalk? We're the only ones. And that wave came, and we had everybody laughing. Really.
Oh my God.
We were drenched.
Wow.
And we tried to escape it. We said, where do we go? I mean, this thing was just gonna, I'm thankful it didn't take us out to sea.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah, that happened a couple of years ago. And so the truth is, can I be honest with you? My mother used to take me down to the ocean every time a storm was coming. She had a thing about ocean and storms. And so we'd go down there and we'd wait for the waves to come and everything. So I always say to James, let's go and check out what's going on down by the ocean. He said, do it later.
Yeah. Adina and I are the same way. I'm ready to walk right into it and experience it to a point. But then, no, she don't want to have anything to do. She's ready to load up and go, get out. So anyway, it's storms are fun topics to talk about. Speaking of fun topics to talk about, let's talk about Sherry for a little bit. Hi, Sherry. You're a fun topic to talk about.
Oh my goodness, y'all must be desperate for topics.
I agree, Sherry. You are so funny. You are. I remember the first time I met you. I think I laughed for an hour. James and I were just laughing for an hour. I'm like, oh my goodness, I love this woman. I mean, you did wonders for my skin, and I mean, I must have had a facelift. I think my chin was on my forehead.
I have a lot of adventures.
Yep.
Cora May tells on me. Cora May Reefbaum.
Yeah.
She tells on me.
Well,
you're down for a little bit, but she may appear sometime.
Well, you have a great recollection of things that have happened to you, and they're always good. So
They may be skewed a little bit, but
yeah. Hey, you'd be the only one, Sherry, that ever skews their stories a little bit. So we actually had a great big old tree limb fall on our tiny house during the storm. And so we're kind of waiting. I'm going to take a picture and send that to the insurance company. But that was kind of our biggest deal during the storm. And anyway, speaking of storms, the Constitution is storming itself. So we have had a few really good weeks, and especially the last couple of weeks, the topics that we've talked about are all very interesting, very, very good. We're in Article 1, Section 8, and the 18 clauses that entail Section 8. And we have been going through those almost one at a time up until a week or two ago, and then we were able to do a couple of short ones and talk about different things. But for the most part, up until now, they've been talking about how the Congress has the power to regulate monies in one way or another, to produce that money, to punishment for counterfeiting monies and all kinds of different things. And we're learning how Congress has set up that system and format of regulating the different things that have to do both positive and negative within monies. And for instance, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about counterfeiting securities, and we learned a lot about the securities of the United States and how they work. And Sherry was able to help us a lot last week to understand a few of the inside things about securities in the United States, and which was real interesting. We've talked about going through my notes here. And one of the things a couple of weeks ago that or actually last week, we talked a lot about was human capital. And human capital is the value of a human being, and all the things that human beings, whether they're young or middle-aged or old, can give back to society, not only society, but to businesses, to all kinds of different things involving our lives, the day-to-day life. Human capital is an intangible asset or quality not listed on a company's balance sheet, but yet is the most important thing to that company. Companies, businesses really only look at the what's on paper, as their value, but they know it's almost like the underscore of what they don't talk about, but it's there, is the actual human capital, the worth or the value of any human, no matter who they are. Sherry, yeah.
Just a small comment on the human capital part. Everybody knows out there that's ever listened to me, my husband's a river pilot, and at one time he was on the Delta Queen, which is a passenger vessel on the rivers. And we were coming up on a port or a lock or something, and the first mate was radioing about the boat, and he said something like, I'm just going to make up a number, 122 pieces of cargo. And he got off the thing. I said, 122 pieces of cargo. He said, yes, people. There were 122 people, made up number. He said, the most precious cargo you can carry. So he had to make that clear to the Coast Guard coming in port. And I thought, wow, I never thought of it in that context. But he made it clear. He said, that's the most precious cargo you can carry.
That's true. Very good. Very, very good. Yeah, that's right.
I love that. That's perfect. I love that.
If only we would see each and every individual person as precious cargo of our lives, that would be a whole different story, I think. Of course, being a Torah community and abiding under the laws of Torah and God's laws and how he sets it up, that's already a given to us. I mean, it just should be something that we do because people we're valuable, so other people should be, and it should just be a part of our nature to be that way. course, then it jumps into, in Clause 7, we talked about establishing post offices. Some of these are just givens. They're just not much to them. And then some of them have a lot of things that we talk about as we go through them. Last week, we talked about tribunals, which were inferior courts set up underneath the Supreme Court. And that was real interesting. We found out about district courts and Article 1 courts, tribunals, what all that meant. And we had a lot of fun with that. But I think the most fun we had was with the quasi-judicial system, which was fun to find out what they can do. And each one of us have been a part of a quasi-judicial system. And if you don't know a whole lot about that, then I advise you to go to the archives of the show and listen to that, because we had a lot of fun talking about that. As far as today, we're now at Clause 10 of Article 1, Section 8 and Clause 10. So we're over half. There are 18 clauses within Article 1, Section 8. And we're now going to talk about Clause 10, which literally has to do with international law. And then we hopefully will be able to get to Clause 11 today and go through some of that. So Clause 10 reads, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. Now, very interesting to me in my research on this, and it's even more interesting. It wasn't very long, about a month ago, Dina and I watched a documentary on the history of piracy and pirates. And the whole thing was completely different than what we understood about pirates. And of course, a lot of times we sensationalize them. We actually, even though we consider them as real bad people, we even make toys. Some of the most fun toys for little boys are pirate stuff. And when my grandsons were just out here a few weeks ago and taking them to the beach, a lot of different things that they have are pirate stuff. Things that you take to the beach to play with, the little boys play with, is pirate stuff. And they have fun with them. But yet we have a connotation of them being so negative. So once again, let me start this off with we're gonna kind of go backwards through Clause 10, once again, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. Now, this law of nations, I had a general idea of what it was, but to come find out when I did my research, I had no idea what it was at all. In just defining law of nations, you would think it's just something that somebody came, a general thing. They all got together and had a committee and figured out what they were going to do. It's actually not that at all. Basically, first of all, it's international law, also known as public international law and law of nations. It is the set of rules, norms, and standards generally accepted in relations between nations. It establishes normative guidelines and common conceptual framework to guide states across broad range of domains, including war, diplomacy, trade, and human rights. International law allows for the practice of stable, consistent, and organized international relations. Now, that we would just accept that. We would just go with that. I mean, I would say I couldn't do that good just defining it in my own words. But if you'd asked me what is international law, these are all the things that I would think that it would be. But when it comes down to the law of nations, it's a little bit different thing. It defines it, or principles of the law of nature applied to the conduct and affair of nations and sovereigns. It is actually a legal treatise on international law, a book written by Emmerich de Vattel, published in 1758. The law of nations has been said to have modernized the entire practice of international law. Centuries after his death, it was found that the United States President George Washington had a number of overdue library books dating back to 221 years old. In other words, they just found them not long ago, and George Washington had a number of overdue library books, and one of them was the book, The Law of Nations. Benjamin Franklin said that this book by Vattel has been continually in the hands of the members of our Congress now sitting. Of course, that's 100 years ago. Really, this is the legal document that we base our international laws on around the world. It's not just what the United States looks at, but the entire world, all the different nations look at this book and everything within the book as actual law. And it's what everybody is supposed to abide by. But of course, you got different people that are different nations that are not law abiding as other nations. But even as far as Muslim law is concerned, or any other general Russian law, Russian country, everything, they abide by these international laws written in 1758 by a man by the name of Vattel. The legal dictionary defines law of nations as the science which teaches the rights subsisting between nations or states and the obligations correspondent to those rights. So I thought that was all real interesting. I mean, we would just assume that when it says law of nations, that this is something that we would just see, basically around the world. But I wouldn't have ever thought that all different countries and nations would adhere to one specific law or book of laws, but it is true. It's understood that that's the way it is. So the other part, though, of Clause 10 has to do with defining and punishing piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. Now, we're going to find in Clause 11 that this right here is even defined a little bit more. But before we go to Clause 11, anybody have anything they want to add to what I've talked about? International law, law of nations book, anything like that? Anything anybody wants to add to that?
Well, I know that can go to.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Abigail.
Oh my God, Sherry. No, because I'll just read one little thing because I was trying to do some fast research while you were talking.
Sure.
And I found that this Vattel, he also it looks like he argued that that it was also a law that had to be implemented within the states. He treated each state as a nation almost. I mean, this is what I'm reading, but again, this is speed reading and trying to contribute something here.
it's in there, and it like I said, actually that was part of what I read there too, except that it was written in 1758. So concerning states, those were states that were on the Atlantic coast. You see what I'm saying? You can't really apply that to the whole United States as it stands today. It was more of coastal states and how they dealt with the other nations. In other words, ships coming in and out, and the different things that, if you came into a coastal port in, say, Florida, you have to go by Florida laws and those ports, but yet there's still international law that was a general law that applied to not only Florida but New York or North Carolina or any port coming into a coastal state. Because really, I mean, international law in Kansas, I mean, if you were dealing with somebody in Russia, it could have to do with flying. You could be on a plane flying from Russia to Kansas City, Kansas. Well, there's international law right there. You're coming from Russia to the state of Kansas. You still have to abide by that international law. But you have to remember the book written in 1758. There were no jet airliners flying from Kansas to Russia. So the book in itself is a generalized law dealing with, when it dealt with United States, it dealt with coastal ones. That would be more my definition, my understanding of that as I saw it anyway.
Yeah,
does that make more sense?
Just also to bring a little to where we are today, I heard and I've known like certain people from different nations who came to United States of America in our generations, if you will, have migrated to certain states. And there's certain people, Spanish people, a lot went to Florida. And the Spanish people, they go to a lot of different places, but I'm just using Florida right now because I just heard one of the senators talking, Senator Rubio, and he said in the town that he lives in, he says it basically is all of his family. All of the people where he came from, I don't know, he came from Cuba. Yeah, he's from Cuba, I think. And all of his family lives there in this particular area that he's in. Now, I know also people who are in the state of Washington, and they came from Russia, mentioning Russia. There's a lot of Russians that have migrated to the state of Washington. The reason I'm saying this is when a person comes to the United States, if we don't have a good handle on, number one, what's required in our own nation and what each state is required of, and if we get overrun with people's countries that they come from, we have to be strong. And I'm talking United States of America as United States has to be strong in knowing how to, tell the people who've come here legally, I'm legally, requirements within the United States of America and particularly in that state.
Right.
So there's so many layers to this, and I love it that we're talking about this because, and what you're talking about is I'm busy. I'll call them back later.
That's international law calling.
They're coming to get me, to take me away. But the bottom line is, and I'm going to use one example. I don't want to say too much because I don't.
No, it's okay.
But because I think some of these people could be listening to this broadcast, people that I know personally. But when I was involved in a certain situation, I'm just going to say this without giving too much information. There were people that came over from another country, and they migrated to a certain area in Massachusetts. And then they migrated also to a church that I attended for many years. And so I was one of the people probably one of the only people that worked in teaching them English as a second language. But and I mean, I'm talking, these people didn't speak one iota of English. And then I also had the privilege, if you will, of talking to them about certain aspects of in United States of America, like just different things of human care, taking care of your body and stuff like that, without going into detail. So I'm saying that, when you're dealing with international people, there's certain countries that don't, that they don't live like, quote unquote, as Americans do. There's certain things
It's
they
cultural.
the cultural thing. And so when we cross over the border to their country, or when they cross over, like even in Israel, when you go to Israel, it's a different scenario altogether. There's certain things that are required of individuals there. Okay.
Right.
They're just required, and it's okay. So as it goes in Israel, so it goes as it goes in America, except we have an issue. We ourselves have an issue, and it's the states, because governors can make a different decision based on their own subjective reasoning, if you will.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
So I know that's muddying the water a little bit, but it's a fact.
No, it's very good. And while you're saying that, I'm thinking just lately, now y'all know we live on the coast in a very, vacation. A lot of different people, what's the word I'm looking for? People that go on vacation in the area. And they come here and they rent the coastal houses out that are on the beach, and
tourists,
exactly. Thank you very much. A lot of tourists. We're a tourist town, a tourist area around here, and only this year's first time I noticed it, though I'm sure that they've done it before, is when you're driving out to the beach, the town that we live closest to has one of those great big digital signs. You can change the message on it, and it lights up and everything. And the message that was on there is, please learn local laws.
Ha ha.
And it got me to thinking, a lot of these tourists come out here for a week in the summer, and they come out to party on the beach. They come out to do things, but they don't learn local laws. And so they come out and they may do things like they do in Kansas, but those aren't the same laws as in this beach town. And the beach town has to make their laws based on all the things that they know will happen by people coming in from different places. It applies. It's not international law, but it's the same thing. It's when you come into a different place, it's a different culture. I'm from Kansas. Believe me, if I tell people that, hey, I live 3 miles from the beach, and they go, yeah, sure you do. And, that's the kind of culture that I come from. They don't believe anybody from Kansas could actually buy land out here, So the culture is different, and the laws based on those cultures have to be learned and applied to. It's the same thing as international law. If you're going to go to another country, if you're a ship, that and Sherry knows a lot about this. If you're going to different ports, you have to make sure you know those laws based on that, what they're doing and where they're going and this type of thing. So that's what this is all about. It literally is understanding, and there is a international law guideline. And it is based on a book written in 1758, and they still use those laws that were written in that book even now. Though I'm sure there are, they've got subsidiaries to those and different things. But I think it's real interesting. I had never looked into that, never thought about it. How would you know that some French guy wrote international laws in 1758, and it now sits in Congress, and they use that to look up the laws. So very interesting, I think. So anything else, Sherry? Anything you want to add to any of that?
Well, talking about how they're coming in from the ports, there's a pilots association, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, NOVA pilots, and they have to, by law, when these ocean-going vessels are coming up the Mississippi between the ports of New Orleans and Baton Rouge, they have to have one of those pilots on the ship, overseeing the navigation, so that there won't be any huge ship accidents. And that's a law within the state of Louisiana, that the ocean-going vessels cannot navigate their waters without this specific pilot on there. And he actually doesn't take over the controls or anything. He tells them what to do.
Right.
And a lot of they're foreign vessels coming up through, between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So they have to have them on there because the waters, part of the Mississippi River, that's a totally different thing than the ocean. That in fact, when Bob was talking to some of the ocean going guys, they were like amazed at how the river pilots could navigate all those tows and stuff because of the twists and turns of the river. And they're going like, you're looking at 3 football fields in front of you and you've got a turn coming up. You better start turning early or you ain't make it. So, and that was one thing. But then, they've got you're talking about the international, they have the international laws. And think about it. How many times have we heard, just like the Iran naval incident? Now, they don't have actually what they call they call it the high seas or the free seas, and it agrees that people can go out there and fish and all that. But then they have, each country has, like, I think it's about 200 miles from their shores is considered the waters of that country.
Right.
So they get all the natural resources and all that. And in the Iranian incident, what was it, back in the Obama administration, one of our Navy vessels inadvertently got into Iranian waters. And I think we all remember the pictures of them, the sailors, that they were holding them there and all that. So that was an incident that broke the international water part. And there's just a lot to that international type, the international laws that everybody agrees on. And you can actually, from my understanding, if one country breaks that, you can go to war over it if you have to. So that's kind of eye-opening.
Right.
There's a big brouhaha about an island off of China that the Chinese claim, and they're saying no. And then there's the thing about Taiwan. I think it has to do with Taiwan. They're claiming Taiwan, and Taiwan is saying no, we're independent. And so there's some things going on today, that, I guess we don't pay that much attention to them. They'll talk about it on the news, but that kind of stuff is going on today. So you've got to have some kind of rules and regulations. And here's our segue.
Right.
You get into piracy.
Exactly.
You have these pirates that run around off these coasts, and what can be done about those. So
very good. Yeah.
We'll get to that subject.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It's mentioned in Clause 10 as very good segue. Thank you. It's mentioned in Clause 10 to start off with to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas. but then the offenses of laws of nations, which all work together, but it goes right into Clause 11. And Clause 11 starts off with, and it's funny, all the other, let me run back here, all the other ones start off with Congress has the power to, and these don't. And I don't understand why, but I guess it's just assumed. But in Clause 11A, it says that Congress has the power to declare war. And that's just the first part. We're going to get into Clause 11B and 11C following right after. This clause grants Congress one of its most important powers, the power to declare war. Congress and only Congress can officially do so, not the President of the United States. And of course, we all know many presidents, including one of the newer ones, George W., has decided he could declare war if he wants to, whether Congress wants to or not. But it's interesting how all that works. Anyway, this clause also grants Congress one of its more bizarre powers, the power to hire pirates to attack the nation's enemies. Did you know that? That history has shown that many nations have hired pirates. It's not one of the most advertised things, but it is a very public known thing that, of course, Congress has the power to punish pirates. All that's a part of this. And one of the notes I have is, amazingly, after a period of hundreds of years when piracy seemed to be a thing of the past, in 2009, piracy once again became a hot topic when Somali pirates began targeting merchant ships off of the Horn of Africa. And of course, anybody that's followed news for any length of time knows all this. One of my favorite movies is Captain something. What is it?
Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips. I was thinking
North Alabama.
That's right. And Tom Hanks played the main character in that. It's one of my favorite movies. Real interesting to watch, see how all that worked. But I did some research on pirates. Like I said, Dean and I watched a documentary on this and found a lot of things that we didn't know. And so I'm going to bring some of those things out. In Clause 11B of Article 1, Section 8, it says the Congress has the power to grant letters of marque and reprisal. Now, I don't know anything about that. I read that and I'm going, I don't have a clue in the world what this is, so I looked it up. A letter of marque is permission to cross over the frontier into another country's territory in order to take a ship. And a letter of reprisal authorizes taking the captured vessel to the home port of the capturer. This letter gives a pirate official permission to do his thing in the name of the national interest. So going on to the last part of this clause, Clause 11C, Congress has the power to make rules concerning captures on land and water. Basically, they made laws concerning piracy. Now, the definition of the word piracy is an act of robbery or criminal violence by ship or boat-borne attackers upon another ship or a coastal area, typically with the goal of stealing cargo and other valuable items of property. Those who engage in acts of piracy are called pirates, while dedicated ships that are used by them are called pirate ships. The earliest documented instances of piracy were in the 14th century BC, when the Sea Peoples, a group of ocean raiders, attacked the ships of the Aegean and Mediterranean civilizations. The most widely known and far-reaching pirates in medieval Europe were the Vikings. These were seaborne warriors from Scandinavia who raided and looted mainly between the 8th and 12th centuries. A lot of people like to make TV shows and movies about Vikings. I've never been interested. They became most popular when the Queen of England hired pirates to bring back stolen articles. So basically, articles stole by pirates. So she hired pirates to go steal what the pirates stole from the Queen of England. And this was like one of the earliest documented understandings. But when we bring it into the U.S., during the American Revolution, the newly formed U.S. hired privateers. Now, I've heard of that, but didn't know what it was, to fight their battles alongside U.S. troops. So a privateer is a private person or ship that engages in maritime warfare under a commission of war. And so we actually, and I'm wondering, do we still do that today? Do we still hire privateers to go out? Now, we know we have mercenaries that go out and help us fight our wars and, make sure things go right in other countries. Every time we, like Afghanistan and everything else that we've done, we've had mercenaries over there that we hired to go set up all kinds of different things. It's the same. It's privateers. It's the same as pirates, that if it's on the sea, practically every nation has hired privateers and could even be pirates to do their warfare for them. So I find that all very interesting. The history of that is a lot different than what is portrayed in movies and documentaries and TV shows and things like that. So, okay, going to open it up. You guys, I'm sure, have a lot to add, since obviously pirates are a big thing in our lives. Surely you guys have a lot of different things. No, I'm just giving you a hard time. So, Abigail, what you got?
Well, I've been thinking about this, and I know there probably are still a lot of things going on the sea concerning pirates. But I think in terms of what a pirate is, and it's a robber. It's someone that is stealing something from another country. So do we have pirates on the internet? Could they be called a pirate? Like China or
interesting, right? Yeah,
because this whole thing with TikTok that is coming out, the TikTok thing, and the TikTok that a lot of families are very much addicted to, and yet in the midst of all this, which seems, this is a child's thing. My children love it. Don't take TikTok away from us. But in investigating, they found out that they were stealing information from the United States of America. That in this whole thing that was camouflaged as this fun type, everybody just having a good time, getting everybody focused on something other than reality. But anyhow, so I was, when you were talking about that, I was saying, I know there's still things that happen on the sea. There's a lot of drug things that happen on the sea. A lot of drugs are dealt with on the sea and then maybe transported via airplanes. But I've seen a lot of people that have taken. So can that be because this particular Constitution was written in a time where whoever thought of the internet? They weren't thinking about the internet. They were just thinking about what was going on in that day and age. But now there's so much robbery and stealing via the internet, and so could the airwaves be like airwaves
you heard it at the same time, or you thought at the same time you said it.
Yeah, airwaves. So I'm saying, wow. Can someone who studies the Constitution or is a lawyer of the Constitution, could they work in this particular section as pirates of the airwaves?
Well, they actually call it pirating. I mean, this what you're talking about with TikTok, even the way I understand it is TikTok actually can go into your phone or your computer. It mirrors everything in it. It reverse engineers it and sends it back to the person that has made this software. It's almost like a virus built into the software, but it's not something that somebody put into it. It's actually already has been built into it by the makers of TikTok. And that's the way I understand it. That's what I've been told that it is. And it is called piracy. Another, what you're talking about, very similar, is the copying and distribution of movies and TV shows. Anything that is, digitally made or that type of thing, they've called that piracy for years. As a matter of fact, put on any movie that you've got on a DVD or Blu-ray and put that movie into your disc, and the first thing you're going to see is that copying this is against piracy laws. It's called piracy laws. And basically, I think the reason for that is because it's international law. And international law basically comes down to anything done overseas in other places. And it has to do with understanding. Now, if it were all just done here in the United States and didn't go out of the United States, it probably would never be called piracy. But since it's international and it goes over the seas, it goes from country to country, it literally is called piracy. I don't quote me on that. I'm just saying this is my opinion. This is what I think the reason is. But that word piracy is used in a lot of different instances. And what you're talking about right there, as far as internet is concerned, because it goes from nation to nation, sea to sea. I mean, I can look up, I find things that I look up all the time. I'll get a Russian version of that, and you can see the Russian characters there and everything. That's not what I looked up, but there it is. And so anyway, very good point. That's exactly right. You're dead on with that.
Well, I just feel like that, they have words, we have the English language, and they use the word pirate, and they use other language, but that word can be developed into, as time changes, TikTok, as time changes, and as time is moving on, and it's still robbery, it's still stealing, and it's overseas, and there's just all kinds of manipulation. So thank you. I'm saying, wait a minute, the Constitution in the 1700s, but man's behavior still is the same. There's still people who are criminals and pirates.
Always will be till we get in the kingdom. Sherry.
Well, on the letters of marque, if you have a letter of marque, then legally it is not piracy. It's privateering, and they give you specific targets and specific guidelines, and then under our Constitution, it's overseen by the president. Now, I think like in the 1940s or 50s or something like that, they all the nations got together and signed a thing saying they wouldn't do that any longer, but the United States did not sign it. And I found that very interesting, that the United States refused to sign it.
Okay.
And now with the rising Chinese Navy, I don't know if you've seen anything about that, but they are, the privateering articles of marque and stuff are coming up again, because it would take, if they came out, they would need more people. And that actually is what helped us, because we really didn't have, they provide for Navy, but there weren't that many Navy ships. And so the privateering is one of the things that helped us during the wars that we had. The wars of 1812, the Revolutionary War, but especially 1812. And I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but this was I wouldn't say this was privateering, but it is a use, and I hope I don't cry, but it is a use of Navy, of water vessels, privately owned water vessels. But there was what they call a boat lift on 9/11. People forget that, and we were just talking about this the other day, people forget that Manhattan is an island. And so when on 9/11, when they shut down all the bridges, all the tunnels, there were thousands of people that were stuck in Manhattan. They couldn't get out. And there happened to be a meeting there. The waterway people and a lot of the boat people had just happened to have a meeting there at the port, and they were able to jump in their boats, and they had the biggest boat lift in so many hours, bigger than Dunkirk.
Okay.
And they sent out a call to people to get them off the island. So that, that's not a letter of marque or anything, but that is an example of how that can be used.
Sure.
And I think there's a YouTube thing about it. They interview a lot of the people, and a lot of the people that jumped in their boats. A lot of them were privately owned. All the ferries came from everywhere. So, but anyway.
Well, I see how that applies. That's good. Yeah, that's interesting. Very, very cool. Well, but you hold up, Abigail.
Okay.
At the beginning, you said it wasn't piracy, right? The letter of marque doesn't deal with piracy, but it's pirates that they can use. It's people that have already been known as pirates that they use to do the work of the letter of marque. And that's really, it wasn't piracy they were doing because it was legal. Piracy is illegal, but pirates are just the people that are used. So that's, I want to.
Wasn't it Blackbeard that was offered?
Oh yeah.
See if he would.
Oh yeah.
In the war, and then he kind of went back to it later. But he was like.
Right.
Governor in the Caribbean.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. As a matter of fact, there was a documentary type actual TV show produced, only one season. It was like a mini series that was about Blackbeard. And it was a real interesting thing to see is that for a while, he literally worked for England. He worked for countries and did legal stuff, but at the same time doing piracy. So yeah, there's a lot of real interesting stories about piracy. Sorry, go ahead, Abigail.
No, it's interesting, Sherry, that you brought that up because this was years ago. James and I were at a gathering, and it was a Messianic gathering. And we were all gathered together, all these couples, and we just met them virtually for the first time. And they were all talking about, have you signed up for this ship for a great escape? And we're like, no, we didn't know anything about this. So they started to break down. They said there are various ships. Talk about, the great Exodus, right. And so, James and I had not even heard about this. And they say, oh, yeah, there's all these ships that are available for this exodus. So that just came to my mind.
Sure.
With what Sherry
Sure.
said. But also, when I think in terms of the water, it's very difficult there's no boundaries in the ocean, really. I mean, they set up some boundaries. I mean, I've heard like when Russia has its ships out there, and
Right.
So they have these boundaries,
imaginary boundaries.
or imaginary.
Well, they're based on, like, even if you want to broadcast illegal things, you can go outside of that boundary and you're now in international waters. It's like she was saying, every country has a so-called amount that you can go, and then past that you're in international waters, and there is no laws against broadcasting there. See,
Yeah.
so we hear about that all the time.
But
Go
I
ahead.
I just see the risk a sailor or someone on one of these ships takes in going out into this area.
Sure.
I mean, the ocean is vast, and I love the ocean. I love the ocean. But when I think in terms of where some of these people are, it's like there's no one there. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness, this is where your faith has to increase. And I know you like, I don't know if you remember this, maybe I'm dating myself. There was a series called Adventures in Paradise. Do you ever remember that series? And it was a man that owned this beautiful, huge schooner. And he would take on certain, like some people would hire him to go places. And he thought it was just a normal, they wanted to go someplace. But they usually, more than likely, they all had ulterior motives as to why they were going to this destination. And a lot of it had to do with it wasn't lawful, but they were using it as, oh, I'm a tourist and I want to go here. And he would take them way across in the ocean. And I'm thinking, it just seems like an amazing venue to get the job done, whether it's having people escape or whether transporting stuff. It doesn't seem like it's really well guarded, is what I'm saying. I think anybody could own a big yacht or something, or a big schooner, and use it for things that were unlawful. Because I mean, it doesn't. You have to have a license, and you have to be careful. And every now and then, the Coast Guard may be suspicious of something if they see trafficking on a regular basis. But anyhow, I know I've gone on this trail, but now I'm like,
no, it's fine.
I love it. I love it because it just, to me, it shows the reason for law. We need law. We need some type of law, and especially in the day we're living in. And the Constitution is great. I love the Constitution, but I think it constantly has to be refined because of the day we're living in.
Of course. But isn't it amazing how even something from 1758, a book written about laws in 1758, still apply today, and they still use it to apply different things to. I think I love all that. The history is just amazing, and even the Constitution itself causes history. I mean, in itself, because so many different things and people and instances have to, even with what's going on with the China virus that's going on today, it's the same thing. Now they're having to deal with, is this constitutional? Is this not constitutional? The Constitution is always going to be a part of everything that happens. And I love it. I think it's something that is very applicable to our day-to-day lives, not just something that happens every once in a while. It is involved in our day-to-day life. And I'm enjoying doing this so much and looking at this. I've even on learning on this kind of stuff,
even the information you talk about, the China virus, right? that the information that was sold to China, if you will, there's been it's like that information, and there's someone being held now accountable for that kind of piracy, if you will. They gave, and it came from America. There was a professor at Harvard University, and so there's these ways of, and so we look in terms of, before it was like gold and silver and that kind of stuff. Now it's intelligence. Now with scientific experiments and all that kind of information, because China has taken a lot of information from the United States and developed it. You look at all their ships and things. I mean, oh my goodness, you say, boy, that looks like an American ship. No, it's China. Where did they get it? Again, they stole it. Or maybe it was given to them. I mean, but anyhow, it is interesting. I love this, Mark, and Sherry, you bring so much to the table. I just sit back here and go, my jaw drops. I try not to go.
Well, I mean, all this stuff, especially now, it's worldwide. The virus is worldwide. Of course, it always has. I don't mean now it is. But I mean, that's international. It has to do something within all of this has to be dealt with on international law. If every different country, including China and Russia, United States, the Muslim territories, everybody abides by these international laws, there's something within all of this that's been violated based on international laws. And it's got to do with our Constitution as well as everybody else's Constitution. And, last week we talked briefly about China buying up different parts of the United States along with other countries. And, of course, that's going to have to be abided by with international law. But I heard something this week that I thought was real interesting. As a matter of fact, Adina, my wife, brought this up, that they're buying up. They were buying all the national parks, and now they're buying old military bases and many other things in the United States. We have a thing here in the United States that President Trump could initiate if he wanted to, and it's called eminent domain. And if the president wanted to, it makes no difference how much China has bought up. If he wants to, he could take it all back based on eminent domain. And now, China, own nothing in the United States. I don't know how all that works. I really don't. But it sounds good to me.
Well, yesterday, President Trump had this whole conference of giving the national parks and everything all this funding and recognition. So I think there may be something a work in progress because
really?
I think something's going. He gave, I don't know how much. I mean, I think it was funding from the government to maintain the national parks. So that put the control of that kind of in the hand of the United States. But maybe there's something else in progress.
I don't know. I really don't know.
The fact that, because that went on yesterday, the whole thing. I mean, I can't tell you all the people that were receiving, and they were so thankful that they had control. Did you see that, Sherry, at all?
No, I really didn't.
Well,
I missed that one.
Even though I know China owns them outright, we still maintain them. We may even be paid by China to maintain them. So that may be what's going on. You have your agricultural person, liaison in the United States government, that takes care of those things. But I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But, all right. Well, let's wind this up. Anything anybody's got to say about any parts of Clause 10 or Clause 11 within Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution?
Do we talk about declaring war at all?
Right. Well, we didn't talk about it. It's the first part of Clause 11 But no, we really didn't discuss that much because I wanted to discuss pirates. I'm a man. It's all about the pirates.
Well, don't you want to discuss the quasi-war?
Quasi-war. Hey, bring it on. Bring it on.
It's an undeclared war fought entirely at sea between the United States and France.
Okay, bring that on.
See, they called it a quasi-war because it was undeclared.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, it was. That's what they called it. So,
and when did that happen? And is it still going on today?
1800, 1799, 1800.
Okay.
It was a war between us and France, and it was at sea. So I thought that was interesting.
Wow, I didn't hear anything about that on the news at all back then. So, you know, I really
like the quasi part.
I do. I think that's one of the most fun words there is out there.
But you know, the
history.
The thing about Congress declaring war, there's been a whole bunch of different thoughts on it, and I think they've kind of legally stayed away from it. If we're attacked, they view that as we've already gone to war.
Okay.
So he's got considerable independent power to respond to someone attacking us. We don't have to, you know, I mean, they usually go to Congress like when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor. But now that was like, they made that argument, or Hamilton made the argument regarding the Tripoli conflict, which was like the pirates and stuff, you know, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, the Marines, sent the Marines in, and long story short, they wiped them out. So we didn't have any more problems out of Tripoli, but I mean, it went on a while. But declaring it formally, you know, then Congress has to do that. But we've had in modern times that presidents have used military action without the express consent of Congress, just like the Korean War. They call it the Korean War, but it was actually, they called it, it's actually a combat, and it was ordered by Truman.
Interesting. I didn't know.
Truman, the Korean War was never a declared war.
Well, you know, it's just like Vietnam. That's a conflict. Yeah, I get you. Mm-hmm. I see what you say.
And then I remember Reagan ordered military force in different places. What, Grenada, Lebanon was another one.
Right.
And then didn't we invade Panama? Bush invaded Panama to overthrow Noriega. And then even Obama administration took out Gaddafi in Libya.
How interesting. I never thought about these, but you're absolutely right.
They were conflicts, and then all of a sudden they have an issue because President Trump drops the mother of all bombs on, you know, and they're like, oh, and Iran is threatening us and all that. And he responds. I mean, you know, is that a war, or is it a combat, or is it just a use of military force? See, that's what the big deal is. And what was it? Congress wanted Trump to let them know, you know, go to them and find out if he can respond. And he's like, look, if I go to you, it'll be all over the news. We can't surprise our enemies, you know. So there's a conflict even there with President Trump. You know, they've all, you know, oh, he's a warmonger and da-da-da-da-da. But I tell you what, we ain't had much trouble out of a lot of things. I mean, there's been saber rattling, but I don't know if y'all remember this picture or not, but on his first trips that he and the First Lady took, their first stop was Saudi Arabia. And I'll never forget this. What they were having dinner with the Saudi Arabian king and prince, and they did what I think it was called the saber dance. and they danced around with sabers, with swords, and they had Trump. He was dancing with that sword, and I thought, oh gosh, is this prophetic? And they had who was the guy that the first Secretary of State? He was dancing with it too. But I thought that was interesting that was, and I thought they really respect him, or they wouldn't be doing that type of a dance with him like they do that with their allies.
Sure.
So
how interesting. That's all great stuff to contemplate. I hadn't even thought of it like that, but that's something I think I'm going to look into more, is the difference between declaring war and the conflicts. Had not thought of it from that point.
Well, the way I think they view it is, in other words, if China has not done any military action against us, and then we go to Congress and say we want to declare war, then that's when they have to approve it. But if we're attacked, then the position has been they attacked us.
Right.
So we're already at war. It's just it's all over but the shouting,
Right.
Well. But then these other things, they kind of wiggle. They have wiggle room saying, well, it's just a combat. Well, it's just a conflict. It's not really a war. We're going to be the policeman of the world. So we're going to, Trump's trying to pull us back from a lot of that stuff, see how President Trump does it. But whatever, right now, I think until the elections, he's kind of.
Sure. I get you.
But that was the big thing with Congress, was because they were scared he was going to retaliate with something on Iran, because he told them, you do that and we will bomb you. And then with who was the guy over in South Korea, and told him, said, you do that, he said, we will retaliate. But that's retaliation. If they attack us, then we're already at war, is how they do it. Now, I think our people in Congress, I started to say something else, but the people in Congress, the House, is trying to get that change. But I don't know if y'all remember it or not, but he's vetoed two things on the congressional war powers. They had what was the Iran war powers resolution, I think it was, and he vetoed that. There was something else that he vetoed. They've tried with this particular president to stop that.
Wow. Interesting stuff. Very good. Thanks for adding that to clause 11. That's really good. All right. Well, we've got to go. Our time is up today. So thank you guys so much. Wow. It just, you never know where we're going to go with any of these subjects at all. And I love it every time. It's all applicable to what we're talking about. So I appreciate
I'm learning a lot from y'all and learning to view it like from different areas. Like Abigail said today, in this piracy over here, it's not necessarily piracy on the high seas, but it's piracy.
Right. Exactly.
Good point.
So we have so much to offer. All three of us do, and it's really good. I enjoy putting together at least an outline to get us sparked into whatever we know. So I enjoy doing that, and I appreciate your input, and we'll take it from there next week and continue contemplating. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you.
Was that the thinker? Is that the thinker? Rodin's thinker?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're not thinking, we're just contemplating.
That's right.
All right. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week on this. We appreciate it. Thanks, Amelia.
Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.